So WWE 2K20 was crap, but hey, thankfully, we might have a savior coming soon. Somebody to save us, actually 2 companies that might save us from 2K, and those companies are Yukes and AEW, separately, because I don't think they're cooperating on the wrestling game. And for those of you who are gonna go, oh, but Yukes was with 2K and those games weren't good. Yes, but they were working under 2K. When Yukes has the freedom, and more importantly, when Yukes has the time to go ahead and create a good wrestling game, the wrestling game that they want, they put out some of the best wrestling games that we know of. Here Comes the Pain, for instance. But I'm not here to talk about Yukes, I'm here to talk about AEW, because we know that game is coming out. It's a thing. It's not a possibility. It's not a maybe. Kenny Omega said it himself.
Possibility of an AEW wrestling game.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's not even, there's just going to be one. There's no possibility. It's happening.
So because of that, I'm going to go over what this game needs to do to take over WWE 2K as
the champion
of wrestling games, which honestly shouldn't be too hard to do. It's not like their competition is a masterpiece of a game or a series. It's actually gone backwards. But anyways, let's go ahead and start it off with the most important thing that they've got to get right, and that's the gameplay. Because the gameplay that we've currently got from 2K is slow, sluggish, limiting, robotic. It's just not a fun wrestling game if you ask me. So what AEW needs to do is bring back what the people have been asking for: the fast-paced, action-packed, smooth, non-robotic feeling gameplay in a wrestling game once again. The type of gameplay that we've seen with the past games like Here Comes the Pain, Shut Your Mouth, and games even before that, like on the N64. And the action on AEW for the most part is fast-paced, so it's only fitting that the game also feels fast-paced. And the good news is, seems like that's their plan anyways, because they teased it big time in the Q&A.
I would say the WCW Revenge one, right?
Yeah.
No Mercy.
Yeah, Revenge is better than World Tour.
Yeah.
Revenge.
That'd be cool if AEW did a video game like that.
I mean, boy,
yeah.
wouldn't that be something, eh?
That'd be great, huh?
Yeah.
That'd be really cool.
That would be so cool, huh?
Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
Be cool. It'd be cool for actually thinking about making a video game for you guys that everyone liked.
With that same engine.
Yeah. Be cool, like if we try to get that same engine and some of the same people that worked on all those games back then.
That'd be real unique, huh?
It'd be like,
that would be so cool, guys.
It'd be like cool, you know?
Now, in case you don't know, the games that they mentioned right there, like WCW vs NWO Revenge, which was a really fun game, were made by Aki, now known as Syn Sophia, and guess what? They go ahead and follow Kenny Omega on Twitter. So that, along with the teasing of using the same engine, hopefully it means that they do go with Aki, because I think they can make a really good wrestling game. And they've not only made good games on the N64, I've actually played some games on the PS2 that I thought were great, that I spent hours on, and I didn't find out until recently that those games were made by Aki as well. And I'm talking about Def Jam Vendetta and Def Jam Fight for New York. Great games by Syn Sophia, so if they go with them, I think things are looking good. And if they don't go with them, just make sure you focus on gameplay and make sure that's really fun. But next up is something they need to make sure not to do, and that is to not fall into the same trap that the WWE put themselves in, and that is making yearly games. Because what happens when you go ahead and force yourself to make yearly games, you gotta put out a game every single year no matter what. WWE 2K20 happens. Things like this also tend to happen a lot more because you're forcing yourself to rush out the game no matter what. Now, some companies actually go ahead and delay the game if there's certain issues, like EA for instance, which 2K should have done, but other companies will just go ahead and release it no matter what. And it's not just an issue of bugs and glitches, but one problem that all these yearly games have is the lack of change in between the games. If AEW goes ahead and goes with a yearly release, what's gonna happen? People eventually are gonna be like, yo, this game looks just like last year's game, which is what happens with the WWE games. Oftentimes, they're very similar to the game that came before. You just spent $60, $70, whatever, depending on where you're at, for pretty much just a roster update. So AEW would be much better off to release the game and release the next game whenever it's ready. And they could keep the game alive with free regular updates as well as DLC. That way that one game can keep on selling for them, keep on making money through DLC as well, and people will keep buying it months, maybe even a year or two down the line, because they know, hey, this game is an up-to-date game. It keeps on getting updates and DLC. So it'd be a win-win situation. They would keep on making money on that same game and we would save money. Now, the third thing the AEW video game needs is something that the WWE series actually does pretty well for the most part. Even though they kind of regressed at it, they're still pretty good at this, and that is the creation mode. They need to have a good create a wrestler, create a moveset, create an entrance, but the focus should mainly be on a good create a wrestler mode, because that's another way that you're going to keep the game up to date. Some people might not want to buy DLC, so if you go ahead and have a good way for people to create create the wrestlers that are not in the game that they want to be in the game, and also along with that, a good way to share those creations like community creations. That's going to be another really solid way to keep the game updated in the free way, and on top of that, it's going to allow people to also have wrestlers from other companies, from other organizations in the game. Like people in the WWE games make wrestlers from other companies all the time, like AEW wrestlers, for instance. You see them on community creations, so vice versa could happen here. And then the fourth thing that this game could really use, something that the WWE games as of recently really haven't done right, I'm talking about online. The online in the WWE 2K series, trash. Mainly because of one big thing, lag. Every other company, every other game seems to have a decent online at the very least. For some reason, WWE 2K can't get the online right. So seeing as how every other company except for 2K can put on a decent online, this shouldn't be too hard to do, and it'll benefit the game in a big way. There's this thing called replay value, which I guess 2K's never heard of, and it's basically making it so the players have a reason to come back to the game after completing like a story mode or something like that. Because hey, playing for the CPU over and over again tends to get boring. It's a computer, but playing against actual players, humans from around the world, switches things up. It makes it a different playing experience pretty much every single time, because you're facing off against different people with different strategies, and you've also got the interaction in there with other people and the competition to see who's the better player, have a leaderboard on there. There's many ways to add a lot of replay value just by having a proper online, which 2K doesn't have, so this is one of those mistakes that AEW should learn from the WWE games. And then the fifth thing I was just talking about, story modes. A good story mode, or season mode, whatever you want to call it, but definitely not a showcase mode. I think everybody would want an original story, maybe something where you can not just use a created character, but also an AEW wrestler. And one thing that people value in wrestling games when it comes to story modes is freedom and options, because in wrestling, you got good guys and you've got bad guys. So people would like the option to be able to choose during the story whether you want to do something bad or you want to do something good, how you talk to a character, how you go about doing something, because not everybody's going to want to play the same way or as the same type of character. Some people want to be the face, some people want to be the heel, and some of the best games out there, not just wrestling with the best stories, are the ones that give you the freedom to do things the way you want to do it. Next up, they can't skip out on graphics, and I don't mean that they need to have the best graphics ever or anything like that, but to compete against 2K, you need to at least have modern graphics. If you notice, a lot of other wrestling games that aren't WWE go ahead and go with like the Super Nintendo look with like these tiny little sprites or 2D look, cartoonish look, and that appeals to a very small amount of people. A lot of people nowadays are looking for some up-to-date graphics, especially if you're trying to attract somebody new to wrestling or new to wrestling games. So if they suck right off the bat, that's a bad first impression and might chase people off right away. And the last competitor that understood that and actually put out some good graphics, better than WWE actually, was TNA Impact, and that game sold pretty well. They sold 1.5 million units. So basically this, not that. Afterwards, they'll probably want to release this game on not just the PS4, Xbox One, and maybe the Switch, but also the PS5 and the next Xbox. Because by the time this game comes out, those consoles will also probably be out. And by releasing the game on all those consoles, you kind of cover all your bases. The pro of releasing it on the current consoles is that you've got a ton of potential customers. There's a lot of people with either the Switch, the Xbox One, or the PS4. With the newer consoles, there's going to be less people with those consoles, but you get the advantage of the stronger hardware, so the game could look better on those consoles and maybe have a couple extra features. And on top of that, they can make more money that way, because some people might buy the last gen version, and then once they get the newer consoles, get in on the new consoles as well. And finally, one of the most important things they need to do to beat WWE 2K, at least when it comes to sales, is to actually beat them to the punch. Release your game before WWE 2K21 or 2K22, depending on when the game comes out. A lot of people are not going to get the game based on the fact that they just spent $60 or whatever on the WWE 2K game, and they don't want to go ahead and spend another $60 on another wrestling game a week or two afterwards. So being first is going to be really important, and that, along with putting out a good wrestling game and being the new shiny product in these types of games, would be a really big advantage for AEW. So that sums it up for my list of things that they need to do with this game, but I'm sure there's something that I missed, so in the comment section, let me know what you think this game needs to do. And also, a quick reminder, Kenny Omega did say this at StarCast.
So when is the AEW video game coming out?
I can't share anything right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if, and where are we at right now? We're like, what, August? There might be something to announce by the end of the year. So be ready for that, guys.
So if that's still the plan, we should get an announcement or something within a month or so. So looking forward to that. With that said, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, click the like button down below. I posted up some new Pokemon videos on the second channel. Link is in the description box, and I'm out. See ya.